my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, episode 564. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. I want to try to communicate very, very well, set the expectation very clearly. So I want to say this is going to be the last episode of this week. It is Thursday afternoon. I am trying to get a lot of film watching done, and you only got so much time. You got preseason games starting actually today, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. I want to watch a ton of film this weekend, and so we're doing the episode today, and then I will see you again on Monday next week talking about preseason week 2. Love you, appreciate you. Hope people appreciate. I'm trying to be very open and upfront so you know what's coming in the future. Also, on a personal note, my health is actually doing very well. A lot of people were very concerned after last episode. I don't know if I should include. I don't know. I just start talking and it comes out or it doesn't. I think it was a stomach bug. It has passed. I feel great now. For anyone worried, I am eating vegetables. I don't just eat rice. I eat vegetables. I have protein shakes occasionally. Doing what I can. I'm not worried about my nutrition intake. I think I'm eating pretty clean, pretty well. I feel great, which is very important. And I think I had some kind of stomach thing going on because I puked and it was horrible. But I want anyone worried about me to know, 2 thumbs up, doing good, totally happy. Don't think I have colon cancer. I think this will be an interesting show because we're gonna talk about 2 topics that one topic that is very nuance heavy. It's not black and white. It's going to be, I think I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to share evidence to prove probably both things. And then you can kind of decide what to do with that information. But first I want to talk about my predictions. Round 2 of predictions will be the first week of September. We have not reached that yet. It is currently, August 17th? Yeah, August 17th, Thursday. And so what I want to do is kind of share some of the decisions I've already made, the tweaks I'm going to make, let you in behind the scenes. We're still, I think what's going to happen with round 2 of predictions, it'll be a 1 full entire episode. I'm not doing 4 more episodes, breaking down every team once again. I think I want to do a deeper dive on the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. Those were the fan bases that were the most unhappy. I really didn't like hearing people say, you didn't do any research on Arizona. No, I did. I just didn't include a lot of it. A lot of it was I'm not going to talk about backup right guard. But what I will do, I think, to make people happy, you can't ever make people happy, but to make myself feel happy and feel like, hey, that criticism doesn't hold any weight, is to do a really full, deep breakdown of the Cardinals once again. And then if people are mad about that, at least I can sleep at night knowing, hey, I didn't put out a low-effort prediction for the Cardinals. I think that's kind of the better way to do that. Because when people criticize me and it hurts, I'm like, there must be some truth to that. That sucks. So trying to right the wrongs of the past. But what I want to do today is share the decisions I've already made. And I like letting people in on the process because predictions are a process. You start, round 1, then I'm going to marinate on for a while. We'll do round 2 in September. Here are the teams that I'm going to take a couple wins away from. So in my predictions, I had the Jets going 11-6. And I'm actually going to take a win away. I'm really worried about their offensive line. 10-7 is where I've landed right now for the New York Jets. Their first 6 games are insane. They play Buffalo, at Dallas, New England, Kansas City, at Denver, then Philly. I think a 4-2 start would be a great start for the Jets. And that's 3-3 is reasonable. If the Jets start 3-3, that's still a pretty good start, given that they would have beat one of the best teams in football, in my opinion, pulling that off. And for a team with a struggling offensive line to play at Dallas week 2, that's brutal. Thankfully, Kansas City, they're better on the defensive line. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Jets' offensive line. It scares me. So I'm taking a win away from the Jets. I think right now, the Jets are building towards a Super Bowl run next year. This year was all about year 1 with Aaron Rodgers, getting the young players developed. Next year, right now, this is a team that is the Jets are a team that's got a potential for a Super Bowl right now. They're going to be a great roster. It's going to be a rough start. You don't have any time with that. Those first 6 games are brutal. You don't have any time for a slow start. They got to come out firing, ready to go. I'm not sure that they will. And the offensive line is a big concern. If you can add in free agency this offseason, after the year, a really good left tackle, add a new guard here and there. If you can make your offensive line a little better for next year, it's a Super Bowl team. But I think right now, I even said in my predictions for the Jets, this is a team that it's a building year. They're going to do really well. By the end of the year, they'll be a different team week 18 than week 1. But really, I think the Super Bowl run for the Jets is next year, not this year. Because different than when Tom Brady went to Tampa, Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers, who had a great offensive line and played in a horrible division. The Jets play in a great division with not a great offensive line. It's not the same. I know Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in year 1, but Tom Brady limped his way into a playoff appearance, and then they got hot at the end. Maybe the Jets can do the same thing. They can find their way into the playoffs, then get hot at the end of the year. It's a team with a lot of potential in New York, but again, I am worried about their offensive line, so I'm taking a win away from the Jets. And I don't think Jets fans are going to push back too hard on that. I think Jets fans are going to go, yeah, like that's fair. That makes sense. And so we'll see, but that's where I am right now with the Jets. I'm also going to take a win away from the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, I had them going 12-5 in my predictions. 11-6 makes more sense to me because I've got concerns about their head coach, Mike McCarthy. I also have concerns about their quarterback, Dak Prescott, and it's a quarterback coach league. You got to have a great coach and a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. And I think at worst, the Cowboys go 10-7. I think they're going to go 11-6. Remember, this is a team that won a playoff game last year. The Cowboys are not garbage. They're not awful. But the reason why I'm taking a win away is that I don't love their head coach. When I really sat and thought about it, I was like, they've got the third best coach in their division. Maybe worse. Like, that's not an encouraging, great feeling thing. I would take Mike McCarthy over Ron Rivera, I guess, probably. He's an offensive coach. I don't, the fact we even have to have it's a question, Ron Rivera or Mike McCarthy, that's a problem in Dallas. I think Dallas with a great coach is a very different team than Dallas with Mike McCarthy. And I worry that Dak Prescott is actually taking a step backward. He led the league in interceptions last year, didn't even play a full year. Like, what? Hello, that's a problem. And now they're talking about doing different stuff with Dak and just doing a lot of picks in training camp. I don't know what to make of the Cowboys. After thinking about it, they've got an aging offensive line. I love their defense. I mean, their defense is a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. I feel bad. Like, week 11, the Cowboys play at Carolina. Bryce Young is going to have a really rough day. But the Cowboys played a tough division. I've got questions at coach and big questions about their quarterback. I'm taking a win away. I've got the Cowboys going 11-6 this year rather than what they were before, 12-5. I'm also, this is going to be, I can feel the wrath of Philly coming down at me. I'm taking a win away from Philly. I predicted Philly would go 13-4. I'm going to amend that, change that to 12-5 because I love Philly. I think they're the best team in the NFC. They've got a tougher schedule than last year. Last year, Philly went 14-3. They had a great year. I think 12-5. They 2 fewer wins than last year. Still a playoff team. Still maybe even another Super Bowl appearance this year. I think Philly's incredible. Their team is loaded. But early on, they got 2 new coordinators on offense and on defense. That's not nothing. 2 new coordinators, 2 new systems to learn. They're in flux a little bit there. And they've got a lot of new players. I guess not 2 new systems to learn because we assume the offense staying completely the same, but a new coordinator on offense and a new defensive coordinator. It's going to be an adjustment period, I believe, in Philly with new guys and new positions. I know they reloaded. We talked about, and we made jokes during the predictions episode. Philly's filling holes, and everybody loves filling a hole. Filling holes is great. It's cheesy and dumb. It's a dad joke. But I do think it's not nothing that 2 new coordinators, a lot of turnover, a lot of new players. It might take a little bit and a lot of new faces. I think a great roster, similar to last year, just an incredible football team, but a slightly tougher schedule. I have no problem saying I think Philly's going to go 12-5 this year and taking a win away from Philly. There's not a lot of wins to go around. I think you do the math, there's only 272. It's just not every team can win every game. Not every team can have an amazing, dominant season. It's not possible. And then another team I'm taking, not 1, but 2 wins away from. I'm taking 2 wins away from the Denver Broncos. I had them at 12-5. I think that's too high. I think that prediction for the Denver Broncos, that's a little bit aggressive. That's a little bit, overconfident in what Sean Payton can do in year one with a team that went 5-12 last year. Now, the reason why I said Sean Payton would go from 5-12 to 12-5 is he's a great coach. Last year, they had a horrible coach and a good football team. But I think what I'm going to see, I think Denver's going to go 10-7 this year. That's still 5 more wins than last year. And I think Russell Wilson's going to work with Sean Payton. I don't think he's going to be a superstar like he used to be, but he's not going to be garbage. Russell Wilson's highly coachable. He's a guy who's going to fall in line, listen to Sean Payton. I believe Sean Payton's a great coach who's going to put in positions to do well. But I had Denver at 12-5, and the more I thought about that, I'm like, I have Kansas City also going 12-5. I think Kansas City and Denver are going to have the same record this year, and I just couldn't stomach that, taking 2 wins away from Denver. Another team I'm taking a win away from is actually Cincinnati. The Bengals, I had them going 12-5. I'm going to change that to 11-6 because last year Cincinnati won 12 games. Now it's worth noting they played one fewer game than everybody else because the Bengals-Buffalo game didn't get completed because of the DeMar Hamlin situation. So, it's hard to know what could have become there. Would they have been 12-5? Would they have been 13-4? It's very possible. But what's really important here is that Cincinnati's been to back-to-back AFC titles. And that's a really tough thing to sustain, to keep going to back-to-back games to get into the Super Bowl. They went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. The AFC is getting way, way better. Herbert's going to be, I think, even better this year. You've got the Jets. Tua is going to be healthy. You've got Denver's going to be challenging them. Cleveland could be better. I think Baltimore's going to be much better. Like Lamar Jackson's going to have an incredible year this year. The AFC got better. The division in Cincinnati plays and they got better. The AFC North got better. And I don't think Cincinnati's as well run as Kansas City. Kansas City has been able to sustain an incredible level of success over the years. I know they've got Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. But I don't think it's crazy if Cincinnati takes a small step backward this year, given how much better the AFC has gotten around them as a football team. Remember last year, Cleveland wasn't a threat. Baltimore wasn't really a threat. This year, in the AFC North, you've got Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland. All are really good football teams. And the Steelers are going to end up fourth in that division and could be a really good football team. They're a borderline playoff team. They probably would be a playoff team in the NFC. That's how good that division is. It's loaded. So I've got no problem taking a win away from Cincinnati, going from 12-5 down to 11-6. Then there's one other team I want to take a win away from. It is the Cleveland Browns. I had the Browns going 13-4. And I think the Browns have potential to win 13 games. Absolutely. They're a great football team. You look at their roster, arguably the best team, roster-wise, on paper in the NFL. But it's not Madden. You don't just get to throw everybody together and hope it works. It's not a simulation here. And I'm going to take one win away from Cleveland, have them going 12-5. It could be worse than that, actually. I'm just not sure what to make of their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. I think 13 wins, 13-4 would be, if everything in Cleveland goes right, that's what they could do. And I believe that, truly. But you're assuming Deshaun Watson's going to go back to what he was in 2020, literally 3 years ago, in a different system, by the way. I worry that Kevin Stefanski, the head coach in Cleveland, is putting Deshaun Watson into a system, kind of forcing him to run the Stefanski offense, rather than building an offense around Deshaun Watson. He's making his quarterback run his system, and I'm not sure that's good. I think it could work. I'm not sure. Deshaun Watson in the past has been his most lethal when he's in a wide open spread offense, multiple receivers. He's in the shotgun. Things are wider. He's able to run and take off. Under center in Cleveland, heavy play action, lots of running the football. Is that an offense really designed to best take advantage of Deshaun Watson's skill set? I don't know. I think it's best suited to take advantage of what they have in Cleveland roster-wise. They've got a great running back, a great offensive line. But does it work to the strength of the quarterback? That's a question mark. And so I feel comfortable taking a win away from Cleveland, having them go 12-5. I feel very strongly, though, that if things go right in Cleveland, this could be an unbelievable year. But how many years have we said that about Cleveland? That they're a loaded football team. They've got, a question mark at quarterback, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson. It's been like, man, this team is really good. What's the quarterback going to do? And I'm not comfortable betting on them going 13-4. That feels like too much of a risky decision there. And so, and the reality is if Cleveland isn't super good, I mean, Cleveland has this incredible roster on paper. I don't know that you fire Kevin Stefanski. I don't know that, maybe a well-run organization would, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Cleveland. Their owner is a bit all over the place. I think it's a crime to have Deshaun Watson, fit him into a system that doesn't work to his skill set is the wrong thing completely, and maybe you should fire Kevin Stefanski. However, there's not a lot of great offensive coaches just available every year all over the place, and so if the Browns are bad this year, they probably fire Kevin Stefanski, but it's a conversation because what do you replace him with is the next concern, although I don't know that the ownership in Cleveland has that kind of patience and has that kind of thought process not to just go, he sucks, he's out. But man, Cleveland at their best would be a dominant football team this year. And I really believe that Cleveland or Baltimore is going to win the AFC North. I think the reign of terror from Joe Burrow, they're going to be a really good football team in Cincinnati, but I think Baltimore could win that division. And I'm taking a step back on Cleveland, realizing that I was a bit over-leveraged there. I'm really depending on if this, if that, and I'm like, I've got too many ifs here. I don't know enough about this football team, and meaning like I really don't know what Deshaun Watson's going to look like. It's been a while since he played at that high level, and that's just too strong of an assumption to assume the Browns are going to go 13-4. I think that could happen if Deshaun Watson plays like he did in 2020. Remember last time he played in Houston, I thought he looked like an NFL MVP. Like literally, the talent around him was horrible. He was in a horrible organization. They fired their coach, and yet somehow he still played at a really high level. I was impressed with that. I don't like Deshaun Watson as a person, but as a player, you have to recognize the game. But man, I don't feel confident enough in Deshaun Watson to say 13-4. So the Browns, I have them now at 12-5. Now, there are two teams that I feel strongly will not have as good of a record as they had last year. These are teams that I think are going to take a step backward when it comes to win total. Now, the number one team is a team that they're a unique situation. The New York Giants went 9-7-1 last year. They won a playoff game. It was an incredible year for them. And it's tough because I have the Giants going 8-9 in my predictions for their season. But I also think they're a better football team. And I think both can be true. I think they can be a better football team with a worse win-loss record this year. They've got a tougher schedule, and I think I know it's confusing for Giants fans. Like, what? We're a better team. Why are we winning more games? But it's like, well, you're a better team, but with a tougher schedule. And it's very close. An 8-9 season could become 10-7. I'm sticking with 8 to 9 wins this year. I don't think the Giants are going to have a step forward this year. I think it's going to be a tiny step backward when it comes to wins and losses, although I think they're a better football team, but they're still building towards their future. One thing working against the Giants, they don't have a bye week until week 13. That's not great. And they've got a brutal schedule. The Giants' first 8 games are Dallas, at Arizona, at the 49ers, Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, Washington, and the Jets. Washington's going to be better than they were last year. Better defense. I think better quarterback. The Arizona game is really interesting. They play at Arizona. I think the Giants are going to beat Arizona. I think Giants fans would say that. I believe that. In my predictions, I have the Giants beating Arizona easily week 2. But you play at Arizona week 2. Remember, their head coach, Jonathan Gannon, was the Eagles' defensive coordinator last year. He played Brian Daboll 3 times last year with the Eagles. And by the way, Jonathan Gannon against Brian Daboll last year, they won 3 times. And so it goes both ways. Maybe that means that Brian Daboll knows Jonathan Gannon's system really well, and he's going to, therefore, the familiarity really helps the Giants. But it also could be that the familiarity with that system really helps Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals. So that feels like kind of an interesting trap game where you're like, I know the Cardinals are overlooked. They're supposed to be terrible. But it does concern me when you're like, well, they are really familiar with what Brian Daboll does in Arizona from that coaching perspective. And so, Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Cardinals, former defensive coordinator of the Eagles, he knows Brian Daboll really well. That concerns me. I've got the Giants going 8-9. I feel really strongly about that. I think they take a step backward when it comes to wins and losses, although I think they truly are a better team this year. But they're still building towards their future. So, yeah, I think the Giants, please don't kill me, Giants fans. That's where I'm landing on the Giants, and I'm sticking there. Another team I really believe is going to take a step backward is the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings went 13-4 last year. It was a magical, incredible, beautiful season. I loved watching it. It was a lot of fun. I watched live when they had a 33-0 comeback over the Colts. I don't know why I turned that game on. I remember in the second half being like, what's happening here? And I think they had the ball. I'm like, I'll just watch this drive from Kirk Cousins. What happens? They score again. 33-0 becomes a 36-33 victory in overtime. It was an incredible game for Minnesota. I think it was just one of the best wins we saw all year. Biggest comeback in NFL history. Then, another game I watched live, Minnesota had a crazy, crazy comeback over Buffalo. They converted a 4th and 18. It was an amazing, fun win. You love to see it. But those are not going to happen week to week this year. That's a special, amazing occurrence. And last year, during the regular season, Minnesota was 11-0 in one-score games. That's just not going to happen again this year. Also, Kirk Cousins is on a contract year. He doesn't have a contract for next year. I don't know that Minnesota plans on keeping him. I think they expect as well to take a step backward this year. Take a step backward, trade for Kyler Murray, trade for Trey Lance. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback next year, but it feels very possible. The Vikings are headed towards a 9-8 season. They appear to know that and want to make a change at quarterback. They didn't keep Dalvin Cook. That was an interesting move. They didn't feel like the Vikings were trying to go all in on this year because I don't think they can repeat what they did last year. I think they know that. I believe that. 9-8 feels like a accurate prediction for the Minnesota Vikings, so I am sticking with that. I do not see the Vikings taking a step forward this year. I see them getting worse. And worse is the wrong word there. I see them taking a step backward in the win column. I love their new hire, defensive coordinator Brian Flores. I think the coaching staff is fine. They're going to be safe. I just don't know that Kirk Cousins is a long-term answer at quarterback. I think they believe that. I think they know that. I see interesting changes coming in Minnesota after this year. So I took a win away from the Jets. I took a win away from Philly. I took a win away from Dallas, from Cincinnati, from Cleveland. I took 2 wins away from Denver. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins are now available to be spread throughout the NFL. Now, it doesn't work that way. I'm not going to tell you exactly because I need to still go through the schedule and, okay, if the Jets do lose one more game, who do they lose to? What's going to change? Who does that give a new win to? I got to really do the math there. But what I will say is, here are the teams where the win total for my predictions feels too low. That I'm like, I know ahead of time, these are the teams I want to try to figure out how to give more wins to. The 49ers in my predictions went 9-8. Like, what? That feels too low. That's kind of bizarre to me. I've got question marks at quarterback with Brock Purdy, but the more I watch Brock Purdy in training camp, the more I hear about him, his approach, how serious he is. Sorry, did I say Trey Lance? I meant Brock Purdy. I feel great about what Brock Purdy's doing. I love his approach. He's taken this opportunity very, very seriously, and look at what they had last year. I think that Brock Purdy's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's better than Trey Lance. I think he's better than the options they've had at quarterback for a while in San Francisco. And regardless of who the quarterback is, the 49ers are a stacked, loaded roster. I know they've got a question mark at right tackle. They're elevating a new guy. They lost Mike McGlinchey. But it's not like their division has a ton of great pass rushers. We don't see Seattle's elite, amazing pass rusher. We know that the Rams have Aaron Donald, but he's an interior defensive lineman. We know that who's a great pass rusher in Arizona? I'm still waiting. We'll find out. I think that they can survive having an inexperienced, younger right tackle who might get better as the year goes on. 9-8 just feels way too low for the 49ers. I hope to see, as I go through my process, I want that to probably end up somewhere like 11-6, 12-5. That feels more reasonable. I think they're a great football team, and they are a team that, the NFC isn't super strong this year. You've got Detroit probably going to win their division. I don't know what's going to happen in the South. Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina. Like, the best teams in the NFC are Philly and San Francisco and Dallas. And so it's very possible we see the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl at the end of this year. And so I don't think 9-8 is a reasonable prediction that makes any sense to me. Seattle also was a team that I predicted to go 9-8. That feels too low. Now, I don't think they're going to go 12-5 or 13-4. I think Seattle is still a year away from, reaching their potential as a football team. They've got this rookie receiver who's awesome, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think year 2 is going to be even better for him than year 1. They've got this offensive line that I love. They've got a second-year right tackle, a second-year left tackle, Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. But they're in their second year. I think they'll be even better next year. I think Seattle's heading towards a really bright future. But I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender this year. I love Seattle's defense. I've got questions about their pass rush. But they've got a good young offensive line. They've got a good running game. I love Geno Smith. I love their receiving core. 9-8 doesn't make sense for Seattle, in my opinion. And so we'll see what happens. I think they're building towards their future. I don't think there's a Super Bowl potential team in Seattle this year, maybe next year or the year after. But they're building towards something, and Seattle's better than a 9-8 record, I believe, would show. All right, I predicted the Chargers would go 7-10. And I did that because I love their roster. They've got a lot of great players. However, I don't believe in their coach, Brandon Staley. And the more I really sat and thought about it is that year 1, Brandon Staley went 9-8. Year 2 last year, Brandon Staley went 10-7. He's gotten better every year. He's got a winning record as a head coach. He does stuff that concerns me. Like the playoff game, they fell apart. It was horrible. Had a huge lead. They lost to Jacksonville. It was embarrassing. They didn't rest their starters at the end of last year. That hurt them. Bad coaching all around. But where does the failures of Brandon Staley really come to show? Is it in the regular season, or is it going to be at the end of the year in big moments? I think Justin Herbert's an incredible quarterback. They got, you could argue, the best receiver in the draft. Plus, they got 2 really good receivers already. They got a new offensive coordinator, a good offensive line. They're good up front on defense. It's hard to imagine the Chargers actually go 7-10. It would take a colossal failure from coaching, which Brandon Staley isn't one of the elite head coaches in the NFL. He's done embarrassing things that drive me nuts often, but he's also not horrible. I think he can fail his way into a winning record this year with the Chargers, and he's average. He's not horrible. I don't think he's garbage. I think Brandon Staley can win with a good football team, which is what they have in LA with the Chargers. I just don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl. I think ultimately the Chargers will underperform and underwhelm people and not reach their potential as a football team this year because of their coach. But it doesn't mean they're going to go 7-10 and lose a lot of games. And the more I thought about it, the more like, yeah, I'm hung up on this thing with the head coach, and I don't like him. I mean, I like him as a human. He seems like a nice guy who creates a good culture to work in, but he's not good enough. He's really keeping this team from reaching their potential, in my opinion. So maybe a 7-10 record prediction was kind of wishful thinking, because if they went 7-10, maybe the Chargers front office would make a change and get rid of the coach and bring in a better coach. Because I look at Sean Payton getting hired in Denver, and I'm like, oh, man, what if the Chargers had done that? Brian Daboll in New York, Sean Payton in Denver, Sean McVay's across the street, and the other LA team with the Rams. There's great coaches everywhere, and the Chargers refuse to make a move to go get one. And it's like, not that they grow on trees, they're not everywhere. But to have Justin Herbert not work with an elite offensive coach drives me nuts. I'm like, man, what are we doing here? And so I would like to see the Chargers get a new head coach, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. However, I think 7-10 just doesn't make sense. Even if Brandon Staley isn't the coach I want him to be, he's not garbage. Again, 9-8 year 1, 10-7 year 2, went to a playoff game. They lost. It was embarrassing. I don't think he's the right guy to win a Super Bowl with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. However, I think 7-10, that's too harsh, and I want to give the Chargers more wins when I reconsider and do round 2 of my predictions. Now, Atlanta was a team I predicted to go 8-9. And I was fairly generous during that topic, not in my prediction of 8-9, but I said I could be wrong about this one. I said 8-9 could be much higher because the NFC South is up for grabs. You've got Tampa, Carolina, New Orleans, and Atlanta, and they've got an unknown at quarterback, yes. But I really sat and thought about this Atlanta football team. They've got a top 10 offensive line. They added a ton of players on defense. They're going to be good up front on both sides of the ball. I don't expect Desmond Ridder to be horrible. He's not going to be an MVP candidate, but he's not going to lose you a game, I don't believe. I think he's going to be solid. Not amazing, not horrible, decent, solid, fairly average. But I don't think they need anything more than that at quarterback. They've got an incredible running game. They've got athletes everywhere. And the fact they're going to be good up front on both sides of the ball is a huge deal because it's going to keep them in close games either way. And so a team that went 7-10 last year in not a tough division, I think 8-9 could be one more win at 9-8, maybe even 10-7. I mean, there's not I don't think there's a high ceiling for Atlanta where they're going to go 13-4. But 8-9 feels too low for Atlanta. And the more I pay attention and think about Atlanta, I look at Carolina. A lot of people are hot on Atlanta. I like where Atlanta's going, but I think it could take them some time. I don't know that Carolina, everyone's talking about Carolina, how great Carolina is. They got Bryce Young, got this great coaching staff. They got Adam Thielen at receiver. Adam Thielen's old. They got replaced for a reason in Minnesota. I like him, but I'm not yet on the boat of saying Carolina's going to win their division in the NFC South. I think, if anything, it's Atlanta or New Orleans, and I think 8-9 prediction for Atlanta, that feels too low to me. And so I know, I really thought about it. I'm like, they're good up front on defense. They're good up front on offense. That goes a long way in this division, which is a weaker division. How much do you really trust Derek Carr? Like, who's going to have more interceptions this year, Derek Carr or Desmond Ridder? Like, that's a really interesting question, and I think it could be Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr could have way more turnovers than Desmond Ridder. So I think 8-9 feels too low for Atlanta. They're probably more like 9-8, 10-7. They're not going to be 13-4. They're not 12-5. But Atlanta could win their division, and I think I want to give another win when I can figure it out to Atlanta. So that's kind of an update on how predictions are going. I'm telling you behind the scenes, the decisions I'm making, the things I'm thinking about. We're not there yet. Predictions round 2 is going to be in September, but I hope people like that. I think that's kind of showing you guys how the sausage is made, showing you guys what's going on behind the scenes and what I'm thinking. And I am showing you my notes, I guess. I'm giving you the ability to see what I'm working on and what I'm thinking right now. And I don't know, I love this kind of stuff. I love predictions. I love conversations about all kinds of stuff. And, the thing I feel really strongly about, taking a win from the Jets, taking a win from Dallas, those are the two teams that I'm like, the quarterback concerns me a lot in Dallas. The coach concerns me. The offensive line is a problem in New York. And the 49ers in Seattle, they were done dirty, in my opinion. 9-8 for both of them feels too low. So, and then the Chargers, 7-10 is just not, I don't think, reasonable for the Chargers. When I really thought about it, how did I end up at 7-10? It was disrespectful to Brandon Staley, who is not a great coach, but he's not a disaster, horrible coach either. And you got a great roster in LA with the Chargers. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm a little too biased here of my frustration with what's gone on in the past with Brandon Staley, losing close games, the implosion in the playoffs, frustrating decisions made with personnel. But it doesn't mean he's a horrible garbage coach either. So 7-10 doesn't feel reasonable for the Chargers. Now, I want to play a fun game. This is something that this topic is going to be heavy on nuance. I'm going to share one side of a story, the other side of a story, let you kind of decide, because it's not clear to me whose fault it is. But who is to blame? The coach or the quarterback? Last year, the Raiders went 6-11. Their quarterback was Derek Carr. Their head coach was Josh McDaniels. Who is to blame for the Raiders' failures last year? With Derek Carr at quarterback, they lost 8 games, Derek Carr at quarterback last year, by 1 score or less. They were not able to win close games with Derek Carr. It was a problem. And then week 17, after benching Derek Carr, they lost to the 49ers in overtime, 34-37. In a weird way, I know they lost a close game to the 49ers. That's actually kind of an impressive loss. They had Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. They somehow challenged the 49ers. It was like, wow, this is a surprisingly good and close game given how bad the Raiders have been this year. I don't know what to make of that. They got rid of Derek Carr. They almost beat the 49ers. Is that good coaching? Is that they would have beat the 49ers if they had Derek Carr? I don't know. I'm just asking questions here. Now, what's going to be really, really fun this year is that the Raiders got rid of Derek Carr. They shipped him off. They cut him. He signed with the New Orleans Saints a 4-year, $150 million contract. That's a lot of money for Derek Carr. And what's going to be fun is figuring out who is to blame. Who is really the problem? Who's going to do worse this year? Coach Josh McDaniels or quarterback Derek Carr? Derek Carr's in New Orleans. Who's going to have a better year? Derek Carr in New Orleans or Josh McDaniels with Jimmy Garoppolo as his quarterback with the Raiders? Now, to me, replacing Derek Carr was emotional. I like Derek Carr as a human. I think he really gave everything he had to the Raiders organization. But it made sense. It was time. First of all, it was time. Derek Carr needed a fresh start to get out of the Raiders organization. It wasn't working. He'd had years of being let down, a lot of stuff going wrong off the field. And John Gruden, Henry Ruggs III, just to name a couple that you're like, oh my gosh, like blow after blow, they're emotional, tough losses on top of losing football games. And Jimmy Garoppolo has worked with Josh McDaniels in the past. So replacing Derek Carr with Jimmy G, a guy that Josh McDaniels knows can run his system and has before, makes some sense to me. Now, will Jimmy G stay healthy? I don't know. He's only played one full season ever in his entire career. People don't realize that. He gets hurt like every year. In 2019, he finished an entire year. They went to a Super Bowl. They lost, but they lost to Kansas City, and Jimmy G finished the year. The one time he did it. But Jimmy G is a cheaper option who has probably a similar ability level than Derek Carr, and I think Josh McDaniels might tell you he's actually better, given the frustration they had last year in Vegas. Now, I have my doubts about Josh McDaniels as a head coach. Last year, the Raiders had some losses that were tough, like really bad losses that I think you can blame Josh McDaniels for. Week 10, the Raiders lost to Indy, and the Colts were coached by Jeff Saturday, a guy who a week earlier was a broadcaster for ESPN. They're like, hello, Jeff Saturday hasn't been with the team all year. He shows up in Indy, and then he beats the Raiders in his first ever game. You're like, what's that? I believe 25-20, I believe was the final score. That's ridiculous. That's insane. I don't know why I don't have it written down. I know they lost, I believe 25-20 was the score. 25-20. And you can't blame Derek Carr here. Derek Carr was 24 for 38 passing, 248 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. He actually should have had 3 touchdown passes. He had a throw, 55 seconds left, 3rd and 7, ball on the 16-yard line. Derek Carr throws a beautiful pass over the middle to Foster Moreau, who has it in his hands. Foster Moreau drops what would have been the game-winning touchdown. And you could argue, hey, that loss isn't on Derek Carr, the quarterback. He did everything he could. But what you could very well argue is that Josh McDaniels got outcoached by an interim head coach who came from ESPN, Jeff Saturday. Not a good look at all. How about Week 11? A game the Raiders won. But the Raiders barely won this game. The Denver Broncos were horrible last year. In Week 11, it took overtime for the Raiders to beat a Nathaniel Hackett coached Denver Broncos team. That's not a great look for Josh McDaniels. You're like, ooh. And Derek Carr, by all measures, the quarterback in that game for the Raiders, played a clean game. 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. However, Derek Carr isn't perfect. Here's some dirty laundry on Derek Carr. Last year, Dak Prescott led the NFL with 15 interceptions. Derek Carr had 14 last year. He only played in 15 games. Derek Carr was not far behind what Dak Prescott was doing. Now, Davis Mills tied Dak Prescott. He also had 15 interceptions, but we weren't seeing a lot of high-level, incredible quarterback play from Derek Carr last year. You could argue the worst year of Derek Carr's career came right as he got Josh McDaniels as his head coach in Vegas. And is it a coincidence that he gets Josh McDaniels as his head coach and suddenly looks like a worse quarterback? What happened there? No, Derek Carr had 14 interceptions also in 2021, but he played in more games and got to a playoff game with an interim head coach, by the way, Rick Bisaccia. 14 interceptions in 2020 in only 15 games. That's not good. That's on pace for a horrible season. It wasn't a good year at all. And there was a really messy game, Week 14, where the Raiders lost to the Rams 17-16 on Thursday Night Football. And if you remember, this is the game where Baker Mayfield got to the Rams. He'd been there for 2 days. He just got to the Rams organization. And then he beat the Raiders. And you're like, what? And this is a bad look for everybody. It's bad for the quarterback. It's bad for the coach. First of all, you just can't lose that game. The Raiders had a 16-3 lead in the fourth quarter and lost to Baker Mayfield, who'd been on the Rams roster for like 2 days. Derek Carr got outshined by Baker Mayfield. That's an embarrassment. Josh McDaniels outcoached by Sean McVay. That's an embarrassment. And I'll never forget this horrible throw. 3rd and 5 right before halftime. 49 seconds left in the half. Ball on the 10-yard line. Derek Carr threw a horrible, awful interception. Derek Carr kind of getting hit as he throws. He just throws the ball up for grabs. Up in the middle of the field. Up in the air. Like 5 defenders around the ball. He's kind of got a receiver in the area, but you're like, Derek, what are you doing? Maybe you can argue he's trying to throw the ball away, like out of the back of the end zone, maybe. But he throws this little lobber ball up in the middle of the field in the end zone, easily gets picked off. It's one of the worst decisions I saw all year. The only way you can justify this and maybe say, well, maybe he's trying to throw the ball out the back of the end zone and just couldn't get enough on it. I don't know. But nonetheless, I encourage you, go watch it. End of the second half, week 14 against the Rams, just a horrible, embarrassing interception by Derek Carr. And these are the moments where head coach Josh McDaniels is pulling his hair out. He's like, what are we doing? Derek Carr is letting us down. This can't happen. Now, week 1, Derek Carr was the problem. The Raiders lost to the Chargers 24-19. Derek Carr had 3 horrible interceptions. The first interception was a throw. He's throwing deep to Darren Waller. Darren Waller is outpacing everybody. He's open. All you got to do is throw a floater up over everybody. It's a huge completion to Darren Waller. And Derek Carr, the quarterback for the Raiders, doesn't do that. He doesn't throw a floater deep over the top to Darren Waller. He tries to throw it on a line. And actually, in a weird way, I kind of appreciate the throw. I'm like, dude, I can't make a throw that far on a line like that. Physically, that's a beautiful throw. Here's the problem. It's the wrong trajectory. Instead of a huge completion, linebacker Drew Tranquil was able to cut in front of the ball, pick it off, and you're like, ooh, you had a huge completion, and Derek Carr threw the wrong ball, got picked off. That's not a good throw at all. Interception number 2, Derek Carr underthrows a deep ball to Davante Adams, into triple coverage, by the way. Easily picked off. Interception number 2 against the Chargers, week 1. Interception number 3, week 1. He's throwing a shallow crosser to Darren Waller. Bryce Callahan undercuts it. Interception number 3 on the day. A game the Raiders lost, 24-19. Derek Carr had 3 interceptions. That's a problem. That's your quarterback losing you a football game. Week 5, the Raiders lost to Kansas City. I am mentioning it, but they lost 29-30. Actually, I would say this is an impressive game. Probably one of the better games that they played together. With coach and quarterback, they almost beat Kansas City, team that won the Super Bowl. And it came down to the final drive. Davante Adams had a catch along the sideline that got ruled out of bounds on 3rd down, inside of a minute left. And then on 4th down, though, you can argue that maybe Josh McDaniels got outcoached by Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator. On 4th down, KC runs a heavy blitz. Derek Carr didn't have an answer. He throws a prayer up deep. No one's really there. 2 receivers ran into each other and fell down. You could argue that's a play call that didn't anticipate a blitz, or something went wrong because you had nowhere for Derek Carr to throw the ball to beat a blitz. And that's a problem. That's not a great play call. But that's one where I can live. You lose to the Chiefs, 29-30, comes down to the final drive. Okay, fair enough. That's not one I want to hate on anybody for. Now, week 2, the Raiders lost to Arizona in overtime. They lost 29-23. This is another tough one where Derek Carr was 25 for 39 passing at 252 yards. 2 touchdowns, 0 turnovers at all, no fumbles, no interceptions, nothing. Game ends in overtime when Hunter Renfrow, Raiders receiver, fumbles, and the Cardinals picked it up and took it for a long touchdown. It's another one where you're like, it's a loss, it's a close loss. But quarterback didn't have any crazy turnovers. They lost in a bad way. It's unfortunate. You had the ball in the overtime, and your drive came up short because your receiver fumbled. Now, Derek Carr's last game as a Raider, not a good ending. Week 16, the Raiders lost to Pittsburgh 13-10. And Derek Carr had 3 interceptions, all of them in the second half. Now, the first two were not entirely his fault, I would say. Interception number 1 bounced off of tight end Foster Moreau's hands. That's just bad luck. Interception number 2 bounced off of Hunter Renfro's hands. It's a tight throw. It was on a line. I don't know. It should have been a catch by Hunter Renfro. Instead, it bounced in the air, got picked off. That's 2 interceptions on the day from Derek Carr that you could argue are not his fault and just bad luck. But interception number 3 from Derek Carr was a bad throw. 36 seconds left. They're on their own 29-yard line. Derek Carr has Hunter Renfro open deep for a massive completion that arguably would have put them into field goal range. Derek Carr stepping up in the pocket. He's avoiding the rush. And he overthrows Hunter Renfro. It gets picked off. Ball game over. The Raiders lose to the Steelers 13-10. In a game where your starting quarterback had 3 interceptions. I don't blame. That's the last game Derek Carr ever played for the Raiders. He got benched after that. I understand the coach getting frustrated saying, we're not doing this anymore. Like, I am so tired of my quarterback throwing picks, multiple picks, and losing us football games. And the evidence, they get added up over the year. It's a bad one. It's very interesting because there are some horrible, horrible interceptions by Derek Carr. The Rams one to me was the worst one by far, where 3rd and 5 before halftime in the red zone, you're just throwing the ball up for grabs in the middle of the field. Like, what are you doing? That's the word. That's criminal. Like, that's, hey, you maybe you miss against the Steelers. It's a throw. You're stepping up. You're trying to avoid the rush. You put too much mustard on it. I understand. It's a tough situation. It's a physical mistake, not a mental error. Some of the interceptions they bounce off receivers' hands. They go up in the air. That's a bad decision. The Chargers game was really bad. A lot of bad interceptions, throwing into triple coverage. Like, what are you doing, man? And then the Rams interception, though, is the one to me where I'm like, you can't even justify that one. Hey, maybe it's week 1. Devontae Adams, you're trying to show him he's our best receiver. He's down there somewhere. It might be triple coverage. I trust him. You can even justify it in some horrible, weird way. You can't justify the interception against the Rams, a game they lost to Baker Mayfield and was really embarrassing. You can't justify that one. It's horrible. Not every interception was Derek Carr's fault. Week 3, they lost to the Titans 24-22. It was in the 4th quarter, 3rd and 3, balls on the 6-yard line. They were in the red zone. They get a first down. It's going to be 1st and goal. 3rd and 3, the ball bounced off of tight end Darren Waller's hands up in the air, gets picked off by Kevin Byard, the safety I love in Tennessee. That's not Derek Carr's fault. So not every interception Derek Carr threw was his fault last year. It's a nuanced conversation. It's messy. Derek Carr had some horrible interceptions. He had some ones that weren't his fault. You had Josh McDaniels, the coach, getting out coached by Steve Spagnuolo on 4th down. They lost to Jeff Saturday. They barely beat Nathaniel Hackett in overtime. They lost to Baker Mayfield and Sean McVay. I mean, it's pretty crazy that you have a season where your coach loses to both Jeff Saturday and Baker Mayfield in the weirdest way possible. It's not a good year. And I'm trying to have a nuanced conversation here. It's not black and white. Who's at fault here? The coach or the quarterback? I think you could argue, first of all, Derek Carr, the quarterback, Josh McDaniels, the coach, they did not work well together. Like, not at all. 6-11 year. They didn't seem to be on the same page. It was a horrible year for both of them. I think what's possible is they're both just mediocre. Got a mediocre head coach and a mediocre quarterback who together were a bad mix. Now, I think what Josh McDaniels wanted simply this offseason, got rid of Derek Carr, brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. He's like, I just don't want a quarterback who's going to lose me games. And too many times last year, you could argue Derek Carr lost them the game. Close games, some really bad mistakes. I mean, again, that Rams game, horrible interception in the red zone. They kick a field goal there rather than throwing a pick right before halftime. They win. They win 19-17. Like, these mistakes came to bite them in the butt. It really mattered. Lost to the Chargers by, 24-19, and a game where your quarterback had 3 interceptions, all of them bad. You lost to the Steelers 13-10 with your quarterback throwing the game away at the end. That matters. It's a huge deal. So I think what Josh McDaniels wanted was, I just don't want a quarterback who's going to cost me the game anymore. They brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, a cheaper option. But then, is it the chicken or the egg? Whose fault is it? Is the reason why Derek Carr played badly the worst year of his career because he had bad coaching from Josh McDaniels? You know what I mean? It's a circle. You just go round and around and around. And, I thought often Josh McDaniels got outcoached. Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Nathaniel Hackett, Jeff Saturday. It's laughable they lost to Baker Mayfield and Jeff Saturday in the same year. That's crazy. So it's really interesting to me. Derek Carr is now in New Orleans. Josh McDaniels has Jimmy Garoppolo. Who's going to do better this fall? What if they both do bad? What if they both do okay? I think what could happen is they both do okay and we realize, yeah, they're both mediocre. You know, it's not the first time Josh McDaniels has been a head coach. He was horrible with the Denver Broncos. I have my concerns about Josh McDaniels. Derek Carr, he's got a great team around him in New Orleans. A lot of pressure there. If you don't do well with the roster they put around Derek Carr in New Orleans, it's you. You're the problem. I think what's going to happen is both of them are going to be mediocre. Not horrible, not great. 8-9, 7-10, 10-7, just kind of right around the middle of the NFL. I think both of them are probably just very mediocre at their job. But a mediocre person or player working with great people can be elevated. I think the worst problem is a mediocre coach. A mediocre quarterback with a great football team can win. That might be Derek Carr. A mediocre coach with a great team is wasted potential. And so, I don't know. I'm really interested. Who do you think is worse, Derek Carr or Josh McDaniels last year? Who was the problem? I think it was probably a mix of both of them. That's why I say, Strong Opinion Sports is a show about, yes, when I have a strong opinion, I share it. But sometimes there's not a clear answer. And you just talk about the nuance. And that's what this topic was trying to do, is talk about this messy situation. Who is worse? Who is better? I'm not going to lie to you and make some crazy proclamation and say, Josh McDaniels was the problem, because he wasn't entirely the problem. That would be, what's the word? Disingenuine. Disingenuous, maybe? I'm not sure disingenuous or disingenuine. I'm not sure. S or no S. I don't know. But regardless, it's a conversation that deserves nuance, and it'll be really fun to watch how things play out this year with Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels. All right. How long have we been going today? I have no idea. 53 minutes? Wow. This show is flying by. That's crazy. On Tuesday night, Hard Knocks Episode 2 came out. I watched it yesterday on Wednesday. Today is Thursday. I loved it. I loved Hard Knocks Episode 2 with the New York Jets. It was great. I don't really have anything new to say I didn't already say about Episode 1. Because it was just more of what I liked about Episode 1. It's more of Aaron Rodgers. It's more of Robert Saleh. The focus is on them. Aaron Rodgers, as a superstar quarterback, is really interesting. You got some storylines with Zach Wilson. You've got Robert Saleh, a coach I love. I admire him. I'd love to play for him. Seems like a good leader of men. You can't say that about everybody. I am cooling on Bill Belichick, for example. The more I hear about Bill Belichick, the more I observe him. I'm like, I wouldn't want to play there. I wouldn't want to work with him. Seems like he's not the genius we thought he was. He was great in the old NFL. But in the new age NFL, I don't think Bill Belichick's working out. Robert Saleh, awesome coach. I think that, this sounds crazy. I'm not comparing them or trying to say that he's better, but what I'm saying is I really like Robert Saleh. I'd love to play for him. I don't know that I'd love to play for Bill Belichick. Interesting stuff there. And I think that Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers are fantastic television. If you haven't watched Hard Knocks yet, or if you're a person who used to watch and then we're like, Hard Knocks sucks. Look, it's been horrible the last couple of years. Wasn't interesting. This one's interesting. This Hard Knocks with Aaron Rodgers, it makes me wonder if next year they can get another superstar quarterback, another coach who is this compelling. If they can get next year, I don't know, Russell Wilson, or I don't know. I've never seen a Hard Knocks series that was so dedicated to the coach and the quarterback. Those are the most interesting parts of every football team, especially this one. And man, is it good television. I highly recommend it if you haven't watched it. They did an opening with Oz Perlman in episode 2, a mentalist who was really trippy and surprising. Now, the one takeaway, the one thing worth talking about from episode 2 of Hard Knocks, something that whether you watch the show or not, it's interesting to hear. I think if you're a Jets fan, if you're not, whatever, this is good content that is interesting. The biggest takeaway from Hard Knocks episode 2 is a throwaway line from the Jets quarterback, Zach Wilson, their former starting quarterback, who's now the backup to Aaron Rodgers. Former top pick, guy who's viewed as a potential franchise quarterback, maybe certainly once was viewed as a franchise quarterback in New York. There's a throwaway line. Zach Wilson kind of says it He's kind of stressed and getting warmed up. He's like, no more stressing about football. No more being stressed about football, I think is what he said. No, he said, I'm done being stressed about football. Before a preseason game, that's what he says. And everyone before this preseason game is coming up to Zach Wilson saying, smile, have fun, enjoy the game. There's a story there that we don't know all of. There's a story where the locker room must know, the coaching staff. The defensive coordinator came up to him and said, smile, Zach, have fun, enjoy the game. And his response is, I'm done being stressed about football. That implies there were 2 years of Jets football with Zach Wilson where it was stressful. It wasn't fun. I think he lost the joy of the game. All that pressure of being the guy, the quarterback of the New York Jets, top 5 pick, all this pressure on you. I don't think he enjoyed it. And I think he lost along the way what the reason he played football for. Like regardless of whether you like the money, you love the game, you do a job like play quarterback because you love it. It's too much work to not, at some point, you go to college, you are in high school, you do all this work because you enjoy it. You like the process. When you have a cool job like that, a job that is so difficult, you have to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're missing the purpose of what. You can go be an insurance salesman and not like your job. You can go do HVAC. You can go be an electrician. Why are you doing that job unless you're enjoying it? And I think the best gift that Zach Wilson can get from this time working under Aaron Rodgers, playing behind him. Aaron Rodgers could retire anytime. He's a multi-millionaire. He even took a giant pay cut, $35 million less this year. He doesn't care about the money anymore. He wants big money. Everyone wants big money. But Aaron Rodgers is there because he loves football. He's trying to win a Super Bowl. He's after something. He's enjoying the process. I hope that's what can rub off of Aaron onto Zach Wilson. I know that's a crazy thing to say. Like, if you don't love it, I mean, financially, you should play football until you can if you're an NFL player because you make more money than any other career probably can offer you. But if you're not going to enjoy it, it's a lot of work. And I hope that Zach Wilson can regain that love of the game because that's why you started it. When Zach Wilson was a high school football player growing up in Utah, getting after it, training, preparing, watching Aaron Rodgers literally as he's growing up, watching Drew Brees, watching these quarterbacks he loved. He loved Aaron growing up. You hear about it. There's a reason for that. He loved the game. And I want to see Zach Wilson reclaim that love. And it's hard to love the game when you're losing. It's hard to love anything when you're struggling emotionally and mentally and whatever. But there's a correlation between how much you enjoy what you're doing and how well you do it. And people appreciate passion. People respond to that. And Zach Wilson in the last couple of years played like a guy who was struggling, was scared, was timid, wasn't confident. And in the preseason, we've seen a guy, Zach Wilson, who is a different quarterback. More comfortable, more confident than ever. That's the thing that no one's talking about. The way that Aaron's rubbing off on Zach Wilson, he's just giving him the love of the game again. He's enjoying playing football. He's enjoying going to work. Now, he's not the guy, so it's less stressful, sure. But this could set Zach Wilson up to when he is the guy again, he's enjoying it again. He's having fun. He's enjoying the moment. When Zach was at BYU, he looked like he was having the time of his life. I don't think the pressure is too much for Zach. I think he got in a hole, was struggling early, lost some confidence, and then it became really difficult. And I think if Zach Wilson can gain his mojo back, be less stressed, enjoy the game, have some success early like he's done in the preseason, I have confidence. Zach Wilson, he's so talented. Like, physically, his ability level is really high. And he's not a dumb guy. He's a smart kid who knows the game really well. I think Zach Wilson still has a prayer of being a franchise quarterback in the NFL and probably in New York with the Jets. And that's the thing. I've never heard anyone say, Zach Wilson doesn't love the game or he's struggling with that. But that throwaway line, no more being stressed about football. I'm done being stressed about football. That's a very telling quote. And that's something to look for with Zach Wilson. Is he smiling? Is he having fun? That's interesting to me. I hope that's the best way Aaron Rodgers can rub off on that young quarterback, Zach Wilson. All right, we got one story, then 3 Patreon questions. First of all, a lot of people are criticizing Ezekiel Elliott. So I guess the Ezekiel Elliott move. A lot of people have been criticizing the New England Patriots signing veteran running back Ezekiel Elliott. Saying like, he's washed up, he's horrible, he's old, he's not what he used to be. I don't really get the criticism. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyone criticizing the Patriots for bringing in Zach Wilson, I don't understand where you're coming from. What's your expectation there? Ezekiel Elliott is the backup running back of the New England Patriots. He's number 2 behind Ramondre Stevenson, a really good running back, their number 1 guy. I thought the move made a lot of sense. It's Ezekiel Elliott's a running back who can get a couple reps here and there, lighten the load, help Ramondre Stevenson take fewer hits during the year. They've got a similar skill set. They can catch, they can block, they can run. I'm not expecting Ezekiel Elliott to lead the NFL in rushing. And if that's your expectation, yeah, it's a terrible move. But that's not why the Patriots signed him. The Patriots brought in Ezekiel Elliott to be their backup to Ramondre Stevenson. Isn't he great for that role? Isn't that a role he can fulfill and do well? The Cowboys would probably love to have him as the number 2 running back behind Tony Pollard. The reason why they cut Ezekiel Elliott is because he was going to cost them over $16 million this year. That didn't make any sense. But for a 1-year, $3 million deal worth up to $6 million if you do stuff right, that's a good deal for Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know why there's any criticism leveled at the Patriots here, or Bill Belichick he's an idiot. Why is he signing a washed-up running back? It's like, well, Zeke's not what he used to be, but he's a solid backup. And therefore, that's not a terrible move. If Ramondre Stevenson gets hurt a little bit and gets banged up, misses a game or two, you're going to be glad that they signed Ezekiel Elliott. And so I just don't understand anyone who doesn't agree with that move or think it's a terrible move or criticizing New England or Bill Belichick. There's a lot of reasons to criticize Bill Belichick, but signing a backup running back on a reasonable deal, a reasonable amount of money, who's going to contribute, I think, a little bit to your football team, that's not a move I would be critical of. That doesn't make sense to me. So, I don't know. Let's end the show today with a couple questions from Patreon. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. Patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. It's $1 a month to support the show on Patreon. You can donate $1. You can donate more if you want to. Please do. There's a $5 tier. There's a $10 tier. I think I don't actually know. I haven't. I need to get better at figuring out how to. Right now, it's $1 a month, and you can donate more if you want to. That's what I say. It literally pays my rent. It's a huge amount of income. Meaning like it's really important to me. It pays my rent. It's a big deal. And I'm probably butchering this, but I'm trying to be upfront and open. Now, the one thing I do not guarantee, if you support the show on Patreon, I do not guarantee to read your question on the show. My only guarantee is I look at every single write-in with my eyeballs and I pick the top couple to read on the show. So, if you like the show and you want it to keep going, support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. That being said, Lionheart writes in on Patreon. He says, "Hey, Zac Efron. Given that it is currently preseason, a lot of teams are selecting their backup quarterbacks for the year. When it comes to selecting a backup quarterback, do you believe it's more important to find the most talented guy available, or do you believe it's more important to find someone who plays a similar style to the starter, even if another available guy is technically better than they are? Keep up the good work. Love you in that one movie about basketball and singing." Thanks, Lionheart. Zac Efron signing out. So is it better to have a more talented backup or a guy who plays similar to your starting quarterback? I think it's probably somewhere with both. I think you want to carry 3 quarterbacks in today's NFL. It's a quarterback-driven league. In the past, you would have 2 quarterbacks on the roster. And people accepted that if your quarterback gets hurt, you're absolutely screwed. But there's so many good quarterbacks everywhere. I think what you do now, like Cleveland, I think the Cleveland Browns have a great quarterback setup. I don't love Deshaun Watson, but they've got Deshaun Watson as a starting quarterback. They've got Josh Dobbs behind him. Josh Dobbs is a veteran. He's experienced. He is solid. I think he could win a game or two if Deshaun Watson got hurt in the middle of the year. Josh Dobbs almost beat the Jaguars week 18 last year to get the Titans a playoff appearance instead of Jacksonville. And then your third string quarterback in Cleveland is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a really talented guy you're developing. If it were up to me and Deshaun Watson got hurt, I want to play Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But it depends. Is it long-term or short-term? But DTR is your developmental guy who's got potential you're developing and you believe in. I think you want a backup who can play. Like if you need someone for a week or two who's got a good, solid foundation as a quarterback, and then you want a guy you're developing in progress. Right now, Hendon Hooker, the Lions quarterback out of Tennessee, the rookie, he's injured. He's actually not been playing recently. He's out. But in theory, the Lions quarterback room would look like Jared Goff. They just added Teddy Bridgewater. So if Jared Goff gets hurt week 13, he's out for a week. Week 14, Teddy Bridgewater can come in, do a solid, okay job. Ton of handoffs, couple short passes, run the system at an okay level. And then theoretically, if Hendon Hooker wasn't injured, he's your guy you're developing that could be a good player down the road. The Eagles have a really good backup quarterback. They've got Jalen Hurts at quarterback and Marcus Mariota as their backup. They don't really have a developmental guy I think could have potential. They've got like Ian Book, who's garbage. But they like him. He knows the system. I'm sure he's not bad for the locker room or anything. He's very cheap to have around. But Marcus Mariota is a great backup. If Jalen Hurts gets injured, Marcus Mariota, starter in the NFL, played a long time, can run the football similar to Jalen Hurts. He can still run the zone reads, stuff like that. That's a great backup situation. The Ravens have a ton of mobile quarterbacks on their roster. You got Lamar Jackson, best runner in the NFL, fastest guy at least at the quarterback position. Then you got Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson, who are two also really incredible, gifted quarterbacks running the football. But if you got Lamar and you got a system around running the quarterback like they used to have, I think they're now a more passing-oriented football team, but you still want a quarterback who can run. So we got Tyler Huntley, Josh Johnson, and Anthony Brown. 3 good athletes at the backup quarterback spot. Josh Johnson is the worst athlete there. And I think that, especially given what they were before with Greg Roman, a team that ran the football a ton with the quarterback and was built around running the football with Lamar Jackson, if Lamar got hurt, you wanted Tyler Huntley or Anthony Brown, a guy who could run the football heavily coming into play. So that's what I would do. I think those are some great backup situations in the NFL across that I try to kind of give you a smattering everywhere. Your backup quarterback is a different situation if you got a young guy who hasn't proven himself yet. If you got Jordan Love as your starting quarterback who has to prove what he can do, you don't want to bring in a backup quarterback who's threatening to that guy, who's going to hurt his confidence, who's going to have the fan base saying, we want blah, 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 right? Carolina's got an interesting backup quarterback scenario. They've got Bryce Young at starter, Andy Dalton behind him. Andy Dalton did a good job playing last year in New Orleans. He's a solid quarterback who can play a little bit if Bryce Young gets hurt. And also, Andy Dalton is a mentor to Bryce Young. 2 birds, 1 stone. But I guess my philosophy to answer your question, you should always have a guy who can play if the starter gets hurt, who's ready, prepared, can win you a game or 2. But then I think I would have a third quarterback, a guy who's got potential, who's young, you're developing, who could either become your starting quarterback or develop into a really good backup. Josh Dobbs is not going to be the backup in Cleveland for the next 10 years. No way. I don't want Josh Dobbs to be the backup. He's got a limited potential. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the future, at minimum, backup in Cleveland. Maybe a starting quarterback with enough time to develop and show what he can do in the preseason. DTR is incredible. Another good backup scenario is in Vegas with Aiden O'Connell. I'm not rooting for Jimmy Garoppolo to get hurt. It feels inevitable anyway. But I want to see Aiden O'Connell play. Aiden O'Connell was lights out in preseason week 1. 15 for 18 passing, high level anticipation, really good throws, good job moving in the pocket. I'm not hoping Jimmy G gets hurt. But if Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt and we have to watch Aiden O'Connell, I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm really curious to watch him. So I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but I talked a lot about backup quarterbacks, and I think it's what you wanted, Lionheart. Landon writes in, Landon says, Zach, which matchup are you excited to see in the new Big 12? So in 2024, there are going to be 16 Big 12 teams. Here they are. Arizona, Arizona State, Baylor, BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, Colorado, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, K-State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, Utah, baby, and West Virginia. I think adding Utah to the Big 12 is really, really fascinating. Adding them, having them play BYU, that's an in-state rivalry that's now in their conference. That's really cool. BYU playing Utah is awesome. Utah TCU is going to be interesting. Utah Baylor is going to be interesting. A lot of religious schools there. That's going to be kind of fun. The holy wars you're going to have between BYU and TCU, BYU and Baylor. I think Utah's a high-scoring football team. Like, they really have put a lot of points on the board recently and are doing good stuff. And so I'm really excited about seeing what the Big 12 becomes. You have Arizona and Arizona State, an in-state rivalry. That's pretty fun. Arizona, ASU. They're not new teams, but Cincinnati, Houston, and Central Florida, they're all interesting. I think Houston is a program that they have potential to become a big-time program. Houston is a program, they've got a really big city with a lot of money. You've got a big school. It's a really, really big, high-enrollment university. A lot of money there. Houston's got potential to become one of the big boys in college football, like a real legitimate D1 program. They're kind of a lower level. They were like, I think, an AAC school before, an American Athletic Conference, I believe. I can't remember exactly. They weren't a MAC school. I think it was the American Athletic or something like that. Houston is a program that Houston and BYU, I always have felt like had tremendous potential as football programs. A lot of money, big fan bases. Like BYU's fan base, the Mormon community, you may not like Mormon people, but my gosh, they're everywhere. They usually have money and they love their football team. There's a potential. Like anywhere you go in the country, you can attract people to go watch BYU, I would imagine. I've always felt that way. Like, man, some conference should pick them up. The Big 12 did. Great move on them. I think that Utah-BYU game being a Big 12 game is so cool. I can't wait for that. And then I'm curious how Colorado can shake things up. What is Colorado going to do? They got Coach Prime. They're just fascinating. You know, I don't know what to make of Colorado. They're trying to be better. They've got some high-level recruits. They are doing unique stuff. Like I saw today, on the back of their jerseys, the players have their social media handles instead of their last name. Like, that's so interesting. I don't know that Colorado is going to be a great program this year, but they're going to be in high-level games. They're going to have a lot of eyeballs on them. And in time, they could be a powerhouse, and they're certainly going to shake things up. Simple things, even like the social media handle on the back of the jersey, like little stuff, they're promoting themselves very hard. I like it, man. I think Colorado's a wild card here that's going to shake a lot of things up in the Big 12 and be really fascinating. So I think Big 12 football, man, is in a great spot. They're on the rise. They are not the Big 10 or the SEC, but they are really interesting. And I'm going to watch a lot of Big 12 football this year. Like, I'm really interested, and I'm interested for next year. So, I don't know. Probably, actually, let's be real. The conference I'm going to watch the most is going to be the farewell tour of the Pac-12. I mean, Oregon State has nowhere to play next year, and they are a team that, what are they ranked, like 17th in the country right now? Oregon State? Like, Oregon State is a program that no one wants, no one believes in, and they have a shot. I don't think they're going to win their conference, but man, like, they could. There's a small chance they could. And, I grew up in Portland. I don't know what to make of Oregon State. I've been to Corvallis a lot. Went to Oregon State football camp as a kid. I don't know where they're going to play next year. No one seems to want them. I don't know if they're going to implode as a program. I don't know what's going to happen there. I went to Oregon State football camp as a kid. I went to Washington State for college. Both of them have nowhere to go. And I got a lot of love for both programs. So I don't know. My first ever college football game was watching Oregon State. I went as a kid. My friend's dad took me. I watched Oregon State beat Pete Carroll and USC at the end of the game with a 2-point conversion. And I was like, I'm a kid. I'm like, this is amazing. This is so cool. First ever football experience was in Reser Stadium in Corvallis. They just renovated it. They got nowhere to send them. They got nowhere to pay the bill because they got nowhere to play next year. It's really interesting what's going to happen at Oregon State, especially if Oregon State's good. So I'm going to watch a lot of Pac-12 football this year, but once the Pac-12 is gone, man, it's going to be all about Big 12 football for me. Big 12, SEC, and Big 10. And the Big 12 has been a conference I've talked a lot of smack about in the past. I've kind of made fun of them. They made good business decisions behind the scenes, and they got some interesting teams. Teams on the rise. BYU, Houston, Colorado. I love Utah. I don't know, man. I'm really interested in these programs, and I like what the Big 12 is doing right now. Big fan of that. Final question of the day comes from Nick. Man, we've been going for... I really thought today's show was going to be super short, not long enough. I was like, man, I don't got enough today, but we're fine. Nick writes in, Nick says, hey, Zach, how do you feel about teams like the Cowboys not playing Dak, CeeDee Lamb, or a lot of key starters in the preseason? I understand veterans don't always play, but we have a new offensive coordinator in Mike McCarthy calling plays, so I'd like Dak to get some game time rhythm in the West Coast scheme. What are your thoughts? I wouldn't play Dak in the preseason. I don't know. Here's the thing. You're not going to play your left tackle, Tyron Smith, who's 32, going to be 33 in December. You're not going to play your right guard, Zach Martin, who was holding out. But now he's back. He's 32. He'll be 33 in November. If you're not going to play your starting offensive lineman, Dak Prescott shouldn't be out there. Their injury risk is too high. And if CeeDee Lamb gets hurt in a preseason game, that would be a huge loss. College football doesn't really have any kind of preseason game. It's going to mean it's rough week one, but offensive lines are like at an all-time low point in the NFL right now. It's a problem. It's not great. I don't see any reason to throw Dak Prescott out there without a really good offensive line in front of him. Your injury risk is too high. And sure, I'd like to see a series, but you're also doing inter-squad practices. You're doing a lot of stuff. Like Dak Prescott's getting reps against teams going full speed in practice. I don't think he needs to. I mean, the Cowboys defense is one of the best in the entire NFL. You think they're not challenging Dak and making him get better? So I don't think Dak needs a preseason game. I have no problem. If Dak doesn't set foot on a field in the entire preseason, got no problem with that. What you don't want is your starting quarterback getting hurt in a meaningless preseason game. That's the ultimate sin that can't happen. So, yeah, I got concerns about Dak, but him playing in the preseason is not one of them. Guys, that's the show today. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to watch so much film, it's not even funny. I will see you guys again on Monday. I love you. Enjoy preseason football this weekend. Aiden O'Connell's going to be fun to watch. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Malik Willis in Tennessee. Malik Cunningham in New England. A lot of fun backup quarterbacks to watch. Quarterbacks you don't normally get to see play in the preseason. That's what I think is going to be fun this week. It's preseason week 2. So basically no starters are going to play because they play in week 1 or week 3. Basically never in week 2. But I want to watch you again. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I believe, plays tonight on Thursday night. You've got, again, Aiden O'Connell's the guy. Pay attention to him in the Raiders organization because he looked really good week 1. So it's going to be a fun week of preseason. We'll talk about it Monday. I love you. I'll see you Monday. Have a great day. Ba-dum-bum. Bam. We are done.